Hi, everybody. My name is Louise Green. Happy to have you. If when did we do that? Was that Friday? if we if you were here on Friday, we talked a little bit about mentorship, and we are back today with Lynnette Marrero and Paylor to talk a little bit more about their experience as mentors and mentees. Again, my name is Louise Green. I am a licensed professional counselor and the founder of a consultation company called Healthy Poor that focuses on mental health within the hospitality industry, leadership development, falls quite in line with developing mentorship programs and standards and talking about those things. So I'm excited about this conversation today because I expect to learn a lot from these two. I really admire their mentor-mentee relationship, and I'm excited to learn more. So first, I guess I'll direct it at LP. How did this happen? How did this happen for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. When you asked me this the other day, I was like, I don't really remember. I just know that, I had been involved with Speed Rack for a really long time. The first time I actually went to a competition was in 2016. Was that the first year you went to DC? Or the second? It was at Howard Theater?
It was the second time we went to DC, but yeah, the Howard Theater.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
And that was when, yeah, that's when I saw Tyler Hudgens. And she was like a mentor of mine at the time. She really, when I was first in the industry in 2014, was like, took me under her wing and helped me and guided me along the way. And I had known Lynnette, just seeing her, out and about at Tails and whatnot. And we were very cordial, not like, friendly, whatever. But it wasn't until 2019 when I competed in Speed Rack, and I was doing everything. I did Speed Rack, I did World Class, so I saw Lynnette a lot more. And I was like, you know what? I don't really have an official mentee or mentor. And I just, went to New York casually, saw her at Lama-san. I was like, hey, you want to be my mentor? And she was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's how it kind of officially started. But very symbiotic relationship. It was always, there was always like mutual respect present. And I was just always very interested in her ability to speak openly about issues that really were important to her. And it seemed like we aligned in what it is that we were interested in regards to food and beverage very much.
We also got, we got to know each other really well through the World Class program too.
Yeah. World Class really, I think, solidified it. She was a judge and I was a competitor, obviously, but I think during the process, just learning before and then throughout the process and even post World Class was really how that kind of formed into what it is today.
So Lynnette, what was it like, being at your bar and having Lauren approach you to be like, hey, do you want to be my mentor? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, it was funny because I actually was filling in and actually bartending for one of my bartenders. We had a small staff. Lama-san was just opening, and I was the fill-in, like no one else could do it, and it was great. She came in, and I love having what's really great about Speed Rack and what it's given me for the past almost 10 years is going to all these cities and meeting all of these incredibly talented and really motivated individuals in this industry. And so that's the perk, right? What I get out of it is going around meeting those people, being inspired by their energy and their passion. And so when she was coming to New York and wanted to, I was like, oh, I want to come in, I have a reservation. I just found that I was so inspired and almost really admired her bravery. Like I would have never gone up to anyone that I wanted to be a mentor and asked to be my mentor. I would have thought about it a million times and then like probably chickened out and not done it. So that like fearlessness to me was really what I found really powerful. And we had, talked a few other times on the phone about, different things that she was working on, but this kind of like to be entered into a formal relationship where you're like, okay, I'm now kind of, putting myself in a position of being responsible for this human in a way. And I was really I was just really excited because no one had ever asked me before, and I love having that kind of connection. I'm one of 4 girls in my house, so sisterhood and these kind of relationships are very much a part of who I am as a human being. So having another like sister to like get to work with and talk to was really great. And I just also found that kind of ambition to me just showed a lot of potential growth, and if I could help foster somebody who already has so much to offer and lead them down the pathways and use any of the things I learned to help them, that was really important.
So Lauren, was it a fearless moment? Like, or were you like, oh God, it's happening, I'm just gonna say it, like asking someone on a date or something?
It's funny you say that, because I don't know if you remember this, Lynnette. I was like, am I muted? I don't know if you remember this, but I actually came with one of my mentees, and in many ways my mentee, but I didn't realize that what the relationship it basically was. She was a new bartender at my bar, and we were like, you know what, let's go on a trip to New York, because I want to show you like all of these amazing spots, all of these amazing people. And I brought someone who was like my mentor, and she's like, why don't you ask her to be your mentor? And that really was how the idea like got in my head, and I was like, yeah, why not? And I was like, hey, Lynnette, you want to be my mentor? So I guess fearless in the sense that I didn't really think about it. I just did it. But, I think to Lynnette's point, it was kind of a buildup, because we had around that time had been speaking a lot more. And, and again, I think just realizing it was a relationship already of reciprocity, where like, I was getting a lot out of it, but I felt like she also was getting a lot out of it even at the very beginning, that I was like, yeah, this is definitely like the type of mentorship like I would be, all game for.
What was it about your interactions that you could feel that like sort of symbiotic energy? Is that the word? Yeah. What was it about? Like, what were you feeling in that? Can you?
I think it was this like initially very much like I was just very comfortable, like I didn't feel, and this is kind of something I talked about earlier today in the panel we did, was that I think we often, when we see people who have accomplished a lot, we put them on a pedestal. And that, not to discredit like any of the accomplishments they have, because like Lynnette is obviously wonderful, and she's worked really hard, and she has a lot of things that she has obviously gained from that work. And I think for me, it was like, I just saw Lynnette the person, and I was like, she's kind, and she's courteous, and she's hardworking, and she cares a lot about things that I care about. And approaching it that way for me was just, it was like, oh yeah, like, I think I said, hey, do you want to be my mentor? But it was like, hey, can we just like solidify this friendship? Because it's an awesome one,
I love that. I love that sort of like reframing of the formality of it, because I think like also a lot of folks going into this mentorship program, which is a formal match program, I think a lot of people are going to feel their relationships with their mentor mentee evolve over the next 6 months, I think, right? 6 months?
For sure.
Lynnette, what about for you? What was that? Like, when did you start to feel like the mentor connection?
I think it might have been even like earlier when we were engaging. So it wasn't formalized, but when she reached out, we talked a bit, once I was able to judge the first one, her in world class, and saw what she did and how wonderfully talented she was, there was just a couple of things we like had a call, and I was like, hey, I'm like, here's what I do when I have ideas, right? If you're creating ideas in isolation, my best advice for you going into the finals now is to try your drinks on as many people as possible. And I rely on kitchen people. So if you know a pastry chef, go ahead and ask them. So like, it was like little things like that I was like, hey, yeah, these are just tips and tricks I would recommend. And so just even those moments of connecting were great. And then she was working, gosh, I think, did you call? Yeah, she did call me. She called, were we even officially mentor mentee when you were
I don't think so.
doing the job at DC? Yeah. So
yeah, no, we were
also, yeah, we weren't official, but we were just already, I guess, kind of already into it. But when Lauren was applying for Silver Lion and in her interviews, also she gave me a call, and we just talked a little bit about that opportunity and what it looked like, and what that would be. And
this was before masterclass, right? This is like leading up to masterclass, but I didn't really know yet.
No, I think I may have known the secret, but didn't tell him. Wasn't able to tell him. But you know, but we had already kind of established some of those little moments of having these questions, and you know, we could tell, like Ivy and Ivy could attest, like our speed racks, when we have speed racks, there's like WhatsApp groups, right? And we were already building this kind of communication between the speed rack, you know, sorority, if you will, that, you know, every group of, you know, whether it's the national finals or different regionals, would have a group chat, and they would all talk about these kind of things, like, hey, I'm up for a big job, what do I ask for? And so that kind of communication was already established as what it means to be a part of the speed rack family. So I was accustomed to that, but you know, Ivy and I are in those groups, so we're not always like the direct person. Like, it's really great to actually see the peer mentorship happen. So it was really exciting to be able to do this from a not peer mentorship point, more peers, but you know, like having more been down the line of this. But I think what also was good was that I, at that moment, also was in a really big growth for myself, having really kind of my first real head bartender relationship with my head bartender, Natasha Bermudez from Lama San, because it was the most formal in a lot of years that I've had one person who was really doing that. And the way that we approached how we opened it was in a way where I felt like, for the first time in years, even though I've had other head bartenders I've worked with, that I knew how to distribute my information and help guide a process, rather than just giving people things that I need them to get done. So less task oriented and more growing with and asking different questions. So that was a growth point for me.
That's awesome. I would like you to speak a little bit more to the differences between that head bartender sort of relationship and the relationship you have with Lauren as a mentor, or as a mentee.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about this is that we, you know, when you're working with someone who's in your space, and that managerial sort of, there's so many other complicated relationships you have to worry about, right? Like, it's not just what they're doing in their job with you, but then there's all the relationships that you're managing. You're there as, you know, especially when it comes to like this, you know, beverage director, consultant to head bartender, it's like we're a team within a group of we're a team within a team. And so you have to like manage all those relationships very differently. But at the end of the day, there's a relationship with the restaurant that almost supersedes that. So it's a lot of compartmentalizing. So, you know, so it's a little bit different. So there's different rules of engagement, whereas when working with someone who's not in your day-to-day, you can be a little bit more free with certain things. Like, there's a lot less politics you have to handle or deal with, of like, okay, am I telling information that is not supposed to be shared yet, and I know this and I want to be able to let them know, but I can't because it breaks some other contract, or so it's less complicated. So when working with somebody like Lauren, who's not my direct report, I was able to look at things differently and offer, I think, advice in ways that were less inhibited. So I guess that kind of is where it is. I've learned how to have that relationship with my head bartender and compartmentalize where we are as friends and humans, or me as her mentor outside of our space. And then there's also different rules of like what it is within the space, what that means and how that changes.
That's interesting, because you have all these boundaries up with, you know, with the business, as a boss, as a mentor. And I think those boundaries are probably, I'm anticipating they were fuzzy for a while, maybe still fuzzy at times.
Our industry is fuzzy.
There's like, there's a whole
the
lot.
hospitality industry. I don't even call it hospitality corporate business necessarily.
Yeah,
very different.
I mean, I think that's an important thing to bring up. But also thinking about like what we talked about on Friday about autonomy and the superseding, like at the end of the day, when you are working with someone who you work with in a business sense, the business needs are going to be a thing to consider constantly when you are in more a simplified mentor-mentee relationship, like it seems you two are. It can be focused more on the autonomy of what Lauren needs and seeks for her career, right? I'm wondering, so even before your mentor-mentee relationship was solidified, you were already kind of mentoring Lauren, but you were mentoring her from a bartender standpoint. I want to take this job as a bartender. And now you two sort of, it's more about like business ownership, community engagement. What was that transition like?
Yeah, I think it was, it's funny
COVID.
because because COVID, period. Session over. No. I think, it's funny. Yeah, my goals were very much focused on like how to be the best bartender I can be. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but it was very much focused on what can I do to make sure that I am the best person I could be for this industry. And, whether that was, I want to compete in speed rack and, or looking for hints and tips, like, hey, who are some people I should be talking to? If it, maybe it was like, oh, Andrea Tatiosin in DC would be a good person. And then with world class, obviously, it's like, hey, do you have any advice on how to be successful with this? And then that really transitioned into, I'm good. How can I like help everyone else? How can I really channel my interest and my energy into, and maybe it started off just in DC, but it was like with Focus on Health is a great example. With Focus on Health, what is your best advice in approaching this topic? Or what is your best advice on approaching this problem? Or, and I think because both of our passions very much lie in like how helping the community and assisting the community, social justice, speaking up for women's rights. And so I think, and again, maybe it was just very coincidental, but I think we were really a perfect match without realizing we were a perfect match. But I also think along the way, if you really do mesh with that person, you will take on their interests very naturally, not in a forceful way. But you have to figure out how it fits for you, right? You have to figure out how that conversation or how that topic lies with you, and in what way you can get involved yourself is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, and I think really quickly to kind of add to that, what happened was when we formalized the relationship, I was always looking for things. Like I think I'm secretly like some sort of like headhunter in my past life, because I love putting people in like directions for the right jobs for them. Like it's like one of those things where I'm like, little career counselor for friends, be like, you should do this. But I was judging the Bombay Sapphire Most Imaginative Bartender, and Alex Jump did her presentation, and it was very much aligned with a lot of the things that LP was talking to me about. And I was like, oh, well, this is a matchmaker moment. Like
she made Focus on Health.
That's what would be better than like having like two speed rack babes get together to change the world for the better of this industry. And I was like, that's amazing. So made that kind of little like blind date for them to meet. And then obviously during this time, there were a lot of questions of like, all right, I have time to focus on this. And that's when I went to hyperdrive of like, all right, here are the things I've learned along the way, really important things you need to know. And here's the mistakes that I've made in the past. So if I can let you know to try to avoid them. But if you do make mistakes, I'm also here to like help you figure out how to get out of them.
Yeah, that was like, honestly, I don't know why I forgot about that. That's like one of the most important things I think you've done for me. But yeah,
so it went into hyperdrive. It was like, we talked about it, then things were like starting, and then we went to COVID. So
and then 2 weeks after that, it was like Focus on Health is announcing their like launch. So yeah, and she was really helpful because she was like, okay, like we went through this route, S Corp LLC, blah blah blah. This is what you need to do to understand. Hey, this is my accountant. Talk to him, see if he can help you. Hey, like, and it was so interesting because in the moment, I think I was really driven because I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. So I was very receptive to all that information. And, as I figured it out along the way, I knew exactly what questions to ask, the appropriate questions to ask to kind of guide me to the place I needed to go to. So I think that proved to be really helpful because she was able to see things that I didn't even consider or think about, that would have, that placed me in a position that made me ultimately very successful.
That's amazing. It makes me, I've been sort of smiling just in general, but also on the inside, because, Lynnette, you're talking about how, you think that you were a headhunter and a matchmaker in a past life. When Lauren does that for me, I mean, speaking of like peer mentorship right here, you know, Lauren calls me, she's like, I have something for you. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, you know, and so it seems like that's, if that wasn't already there, it's something that's definitely rubbing off and influencing that sort of, that pay it forward bit, that women helping women bit, which I think is really important. I want to talk a little bit about conflict. Have you two experienced conflict in your relationship?
With each other?
So, not yet.
No.
I don't mean like duking it out, but like maybe
No.
like,
No.
but is there something that maybe hasn't worked or you haven't necessarily agreed on, or has it to this point been smooth sailing? And if it is smooth sailing, what do you think is happening that makes it so smooth?
I honestly think the thing that makes us work so well is that we respect each other's boundaries, and they're not like, I've never had to be like, hey, these are my boundaries. She's just like understood what they are, and I've like very much understood what her boundaries are. So for instance, it's like if I'm actually listening to her and she's like, you know, Saturday's the day I spend with my husband, then I'm probably not going to bother her on Saturday. You know what I mean? So it's little things like that. It's like if I'm really investing time and listening to what she is saying to me, then she doesn't need to implicitly state what her boundaries are. And I honestly, like, I think that's what it is, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I
Lynnette?
think, I was gonna say, I think it's a bit, one, I think it is listening and responding and understanding, but we also have similar work ethics and drives. So I think that's kind of like, you know, I think that's where we kind of already kind of understand it, because it's very much like, where, you know, like when it's crunch time, we're like, all right, well, you know, it's crunch time, so sorry it's Saturday, but we're gonna like text each other anyway. But I think that's a big part of, you know, you figure it out with people that you're working with, I think. But I do think I've never had to be, I don't know, I wish I could be one of those people who's a little bit better at setting, like saying them, like you're an empath, so you figure them out. I'm actually terrible at actually setting my boundaries, and that's something that I've had to grow into trying to like put in place. And that's also hard as like gig workers and freelancers, and you know, so there's a lot to unpack there of just trying to figure that out. And also probably like we both come from big families with lots of siblings, so there's no like boundaries and personal space are really like hard.
Yeah,
to
and Puerto
come
Ricans
by.
don't understand boundaries. They don't.
No, there's no boundary. So that might also be it, but
There's
similar
all of
upbringing.
Yeah, and you know, that, and I think to that point, we've kind of established, like, because obviously now we work together, right? It's not just that you're my like that we are on the same page of like what the expectations are in regards to what is expected when we work, right?
That's a really great point, Lauren, because I admittedly forgot that you do social media, right, for Speed Rack now?
On you.
She started with us in October.
Yeah. So then it's cool because like you have a mentor-mentee relationship that often starts with working together and then moves into like just a primary mentor-mentee relationship. But you two were kind of the other way around, that you were not working together and now you are. How has that changed the relationship?
I personally think it's actually fortified it, in my opinion. You know, like, you know, Ivy put in there, like LP is not passive in her relationships, like her drive and initiative, and somebody who like her core values align with what we're doing. And so it's been great that, you know, Speed Rack is a vehicle that can support FOH. FOH is a vehicle that can support Speed Rack, and Lauren, as well as an individual, has come on board. And, you know, she doesn't just do social, she is really instrumental to helping us see the programming we're going to implement and put in, and I think really just help. And obviously this mentorship program, just kind of helping, you know, it's great having someone else who has been a part of the Speed Rack organization now help Ivy and I shape what it's like, because without events, it's a whole different thing. And so it's important to hear and understand what our community wants from us. So when it's somebody who came from the community who can verbalize that, it's really helpful. So that in that way that she brings ideas and things that are really important to the team is so it's been great. So she's, she's Speed Rec family anyway, and then that just like makes it a natural fit. We never had we've had Speed Rec competitors take on like local coordinator jobs and things, but that's so different because it's like project oriented rather than bigger picture.
Right.
But they're great too, because we have a bunch of them signing up to help with the mentorship program and doing mentorship, and that's been doing some extra tasks. So we're just lucky for the Speed Rec community's commitment to the programs that we put in place.
Mm-hmm. What about for you, Lauren? Oh no.
Did you freeze?
No, you're muted.
Oops, I was saying my internet crapped out and I was like trying to fix it. So can you just repeat the question for me?
The relationship going from just a more simple mentor-mentee relationship now to working together.
Yeah.
How's that for you?
It's been a very natural transition, and I think I'm definitely learning a lot, because I mean, I do this on a day-to-day with focus on health, but when you are placing yourself in a position from being your own boss to then obviously working with people who are oversee you, right? Like in any job that you have, it's just adjusting to ensure that your vision matches theirs, and ours very much do overlap already. So it just made it really easy.
That's great. I think Ivy posted something in the comments that I want to highlight, and I'm hoping you two can speak a little bit more too about how neither of you are passive in the relationship. In terms of like exchange, like social and mentoring exchange, it seems to me from an outside perspective, like there's a balance to your exchange. There's an equal investment. What is the question I'm trying to ask? And gently, what would it be like if it wasn't like that? Like if you didn't have, if one of you wasn't as invested in the other, can you maybe speak to what that would feel like? Just more in an effort to help other people understand why it's important to not be passive in a mentoring relationship. Does that make sense?
I don't know that it would be a mentorship if it wasn't structured the way it is. I don't know. For me, and it kind of to your point, Laura, what you were saying before, it's like, I feel like we even have conversations where I know you're older than I am, but mentorship can actually occur in so many different directions. And that reciprocity, if it's not present, it's not a mentorship. It's very one-sided, right? It can be defined as any of the other terms you used to explain. Exactly. And it's consulting, teaching even, right? The difference between teaching, coaching, consulting, and mentorship is that, obviously one person has knowledge and other person's gaining knowledge, but at the end of the day, there needs to be the desire to want to obtain that knowledge. And in many instances, I think that menteeship that we have sometimes does switch itself off depending on the day or the topic or the conversation. I think Lynnette's ability to really just not necessarily relate to the issues that may come up for me or the hardships that may come up for me, but the willingness to like listen and understand and want to help is really what makes it work.
Yeah, and I think to kind of add to that, I think there's going to be different types of mentorship and relationships. Lots of people have different, and I think it's important when you think about boundaries and how they come into play. And that's something that we're gonna see over the course of this program. But I think it's really important to kind of think about the kind of person that you are and how you react and relate, and then the kind of person that you're paired with, and that you're going to be, because it's going to be a different situation where you're being paired with somebody rather than actively seeking somebody, which is going to be a completely different experience. We've had some people email us and be very open and the what they're looking for, and we're going to do our best to make the right matches. But as long as I think you have a clear idea of what you want to get out of it, and that's not concrete things, not like I at the end of this thing I want to have X done. That's also really great if you have a project and you really want an accountability partner in that form of somebody who is outside of your day-to-day to bring that. But just knowing like what your goal of mentorship is for the next 6 months, like what you want to, what is it that you're not getting in your daily life that in your professional relationships that this is going to help you with. And then you'll figure out and navigate how that relationship is and what that means. But they will all be so different in their execution, I guess. So that'll be an interesting thing to see, and I'm really curious to see how everyone else develops their Phoebe, I'm excited for you too. But it's gonna be really like I'm thinking to myself of the people who I've actually had as kind of mentors in my life, and they all have been very different. I've had to change who I am and how I interact with them, because it's not on them to change how they interact with me necessarily. And I know Laurie will have something to say about that in an important way, but but you know what I mean? Like it's about somewhat awareness, right? So some people who I know, who in my past were mentors and who I looked at, some of them they were mentors to me and they didn't know they were mentors to me.
Mm-hmm.
They were just, I was watching what they were doing and understanding how they worked. And I would learn how to interact with them, that it felt like I knew that I was not intruding upon who they are, but getting that. But there were lots of different mentors as I changed. When I was a full-time brand ambassador for a couple of years, and I was like, oh my God, this is the most terrifying thing ever. How do I get through this? And I was like, Elaine Duff scooped me under her wing to tell me how corporate people work. And I'm like, great, this is really important because I have no idea. But that changes over time of like how you interact with those people.
Yeah. And I love what you just said, because I think it made me think when we often like get ourselves into these situations or we encounter experiences, we are so focused on the good that comes out of it. And I think sometimes the flip side is I learn along the way what I dislike or what I don't want to do. And that's also really important. Mm-hmm. Because I know that like for me personally, going back to your point of there were mentors I had that didn't even know they were mentors, I am watching so many people and I'm learning along the way. Like these are the things I don't want to do. These are things I do want to do. These are the things I like. These are the things I don't like. And, and then I can plug them into what it is that one fits well with me, that respects my autonomy and my authenticity, but then two will really allow me to follow the footsteps or the tracks that I'm ultimately trying to find myself in.
You both bring up such great points, and I hope I hope folks tuning in right now to this can leave with some ideas of how to best communicate with their mentor, with their mentee, about what their actual goals are. Like, I mean, y'all are making me reflect on, like, I'm seeking mentorship right now in an area that I don't even know where to begin, like how to start a consultation company, like how to really build that out from a business and psychological standpoint, blah, 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 blah. And that's a very specific mentorship goal that I'm looking for. And, I realize that might be a very different mentor, a very different person than someone who would help me build a business within the hospitality industry, which I probably require that mentor as well. And being able to find those things in different spaces, but also being able to ask for them. On the other hand, I would throw out to the mentors in this that sometimes people aren't sure what they need yet, and creating space to allow people to explore what it is that they're looking for, and then to foster that is really, really important. Lynnette, do you have a mentor right now?
Do I have a mentor right now? No, I think I'm actually looking for one, to be honest. Like I'm at that point, like, it's an interesting place to be at, like I don't own a bar, so I'm in those spaces, but I don't own those things. And it kind of was like, never was really a big thing that I wanted to do. So, I find like when you have a clear track, in my mind, it's easier for you, right, to figure it out. And I was never someone with a clear track. Like my entire career has been, I wouldn't say accidental, but sort of in a lot of ways that, how I move through spaces and the things that I've accomplished were never things that I wrote down as goals. I just was moving through space and how I wanted to live my life and the things that I wanted to feel from the work I was doing. And then those opportunities presented themselves to me, and then I would take them and run with them. But so that's an interesting kind of place to be. So I think I am still looking for a mentor, someone to help guide me through whatever this next phase of my career is. I think we all are. And if you tune in for the rest of the month, we're talking about all of the conversations that we're all in right now. Like there's going to be a big one about starting your own S corps and all of these things, and finances and freelancers and gig economy. But there's also the point of where a lot of us probably are right now, which is a big point of career shift and goal. And we have several seminars to think about that. And I think those are going to be interesting panels for me to kind of watch and look at to see where you want your influence to be, how you want to come back. Like I think we all have this point when we come back into hospitality and what that means for each one of us. Should we choose to go back into this path after this time off, this like unexpected year that we've all had that we never thought we would have, to slow down and think about things. So I think I'm looking for somebody. I probably won't ask them because I won't have the nerve to.
Right. When
I'll just kind of creep around and watch them from afar.
I have been definitely creeping on LinkedIn, like.
Oh yeah.
And that's the worst thing is they can see that I'm creeping. So like it's like I'm
like Laura Louise Green looked you up. You're like, oh.
They know. Oh wow. I'm like, I have an emotional reaction to that. So I have 2 more questions, and I think we're coming up on time. Did we say 45 minutes or are we going for an hour? I don't want to.
Yeah, we could probably open up for a couple more questions too if people have, because I feel like it's probably a good question.
I totally agree. So I will close up my questions then by asking you, Lynnette, first. How has your experience as a mentee impact your experience as a mentor?
So I think what I've loved is LP's drive and her passion and her energy has helped me think a lot about the kind of things I want to keep doing, the lasting influence I want to have in this industry, right? Because it's like I'm looking at a broader, there's a whole future now, and she's helped me. Like I even have seen it in, now going back on premise, I've seen how I listen differently to my team and how I put a little more thought into where they are in their lives. And I think that's also part of like right now, the time we're in, right? We're realizing, and I think this is a lot of the work that, FOH has been doing, is there's a lot going on, and listening to that and is really important. So I feel a little more armed to handle, stressful situations and keep an eye out for them, especially when it comes to my team. And just kind of see how I can be a better day-to-day mentor for those who I interact with. But then I feel I'm very happy with this relationship because it has grown into, something, a deeper friendship as well, which has been great. So, not that those two things, like it won't always happen, right? A mentor might be a mentor. You may be friends with them or not. But I think what I've really appreciated is just the amount of patience and openness, but also, the lead by example. So I found that, I don't think LP never really set goals, but it's like I feel like we didn't really speak about them, and those goals happened, but they were there all along. And so to see her accomplish those is really rewarding.
I love that. So then LP, my last question for you is, how has being a mentor impacted your experience as a mentee?
Yeah, man. I was like trying to prepare as you asked that to her. I was like, man, she's gonna ask me the opposite. I think it really solidifies the fact that a couple of things. I want to backtrack or preface by stating that I think when we think mentor mentee, we think when somebody is as successful as you, Laura, you're a clinician, you're very, well respected in the industry, or even you, Lynnette, it's like, oh, well, they've done things, so why do they need a mentor, right? And we've kind of ingrained this in our minds that it's like, no, but the same way you are continuing to learn and grow, like we want to do that for ourselves. So it just solidifies for me that I still have so much more to learn, but along the way can pay it forward and can, take the experiences that I've encountered and the lessons that I've learned and provide somebody with an opportunity to kind of get their start. I think in the last year, I've learned so much about myself. A year ago, don't even know who that person is anymore. I'll be really honest. I've been bartending since 2014, and I love the food and beverage industry. And it was solidified that love was there at the beginning of COVID, when I was like, I don't want to leave this industry. I just want to do something different. I want to be able to give back in a way that is a little bit more meaningful for me. And I truly think Lynnette allowed me to see what those possibilities were. So for me, it's like, I have goals and they're not concrete, as she said, but because she has an understanding of what my interests are, where my strengths lie, she's been able to be like, cool, like, I think you might want to consider talking to this person, or maybe even applying for this thing or doing this thing. And then from there, everything kind of falls into place, which is nice.
I love it.
Yeah, LP got the Financial Gym Speaking Broadly scholarship.
So, yeah,
they'll be
so
running
Lynnette's great for that stuff. So yeah,
I was like, here, you should apply for this.
Yeah, no, I think being like really new business owner too, I'm still learning the best ways to ensure that I'm successful, in that role, because unfortunately, statistics lean towards a lot of people who open businesses and don't know how to run them end up having to like shut them down, or whatever it may be. So this financial aspect and financial literacy in general is just something that a lot of people don't have, and it's this year spending a lot of time investing in that has been really amazing and great. And going back to what Lynnette said, a lot of programming this month, specifically for those who are interested in taking on that knowledge. I promise you, there's probably things you're not considering or thinking about that will truly be very helpful along the way in your journey. So definitely tune in.
So there was a question from Lisa, who looks like she also won the scholarship, which is
Lisa.
Yes,
and Lisa, I'm like the biggest creep right now because I have a stack of business cards on my desk and I have Lisa's literally sitting in front of me. I think you gave it to me at Tails like
that sounds about right.
After like I think it had to be after the leadership. I've been holding on to it, but it's like literally sitting here. I'm like, wait a second, that's the same person. Anyway,
she was hanging out with Nandini. I feel like I even remember the moment when this card was given.
That's amazing.
I love it.
The scholarship, I'll type it in the chat for those people.
So the question from Lisa is, what is the best way to go about looking for finding a peer mentor you might be intimidated by?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I feel like sometimes peer-to-peer is more difficult than like someone, that we put on a pedestal or like above us as superior. Honestly, I don't know if it's just because like I have no shame in the game, or I'm just like not afraid of anything, but I just go up to them and ask them. Obviously respect their time, and like if they're in a bar shift and they're busy, I wouldn't go up to them that way. But I think sliding into someone's DMs or sending them a nice friendly message. I've really leaned into during this period of just chatting with people who I've either never had the chance to meet or talk to. And I've along the way had a really beautiful experience, like getting to know Louise Green and really, Lauren Moat, who's become one of my very good friends, and just individuals in general who who are wonderful, and that I may have been intimidated by at some point, but just start the conversation, lean into it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have quite a few peer mentors right now. Lauren being one of them. She and I are on the phone quite a lot lately, sort of plotting for the future, if you will. But like Cameron Shaw is another one in New York who I connect with quite a bit. And The intimidation factor, I think, is definitely a barrier at times, but I don't know if it's helpful advice just to be like lean into the intimidation of like just like just do it, like just take a moment and go into it. I think based on my experience with the people, with the women in particular, and women identifying individuals within this community, there's a lot to be said when someone approaches somebody else to be like, I have a professional crush on you, I like you, can we connect more? I think we're all looking to connect on a deeper level, and having the opportunity to share our expertise with each other on a peer-to-peer mentorship basis is really exciting, and finding that connection is really wonderful too, and exploring the dynamics of having a mentor and mentee, and then a mentor, is really interesting. So, just like Lauren said, I would say lean into it. And Lynnette, I'm sure that you have experience with peer-to-peer mentorship.
I have let a lot of people over this time kind of just slide in my DMs on Instagram. I've had like sort of peer mentorship from that, and Ivy. But yeah, I think that was a really good point. I think someone said it once before, and I can't remember what it was, but they're like, sometimes the people who seem super intimidating are just like, it's like they never get asked to the prom because people think they already have a date. You know what I mean? It's like that sort of example. So it's like, don't be afraid. The people you think are probably the least available actually might be some of the most available people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just perception. So, give it a try.
Like intimidation is also a factor of like fear and anxiety, and fear and anxiety don't have to always be labeled as terrible things. They can be really wonderful things. Like anxiety can be reframed as excitement, so taking that energy and reframing it into an exciting, engaging relationship, I think could be really helpful for really anybody. Do we have any other questions? Let's go 5 more minutes.
Scan through.
I mean, I'm trying to think of what else I can ask you to without opening a can of worms and giving people time to type. You know what I mean? There's so many worms. I don't know. Do you two maybe want to share some closing thoughts?
I think just for everyone, while you're in this moment of either if you're part of our program and you're going to receive a mentee soon, or you're going to get your mentor assigned to you soon, maybe just take stock for yourself for a minute to think about what you personally want from the program. So I think if you all come in with a little bit of understanding, at least for a minute, what you think you want out of this for the next 6 months, I think that'll be like a jump start to start the program successfully. And the chat on Friday, I think, gave me a lot of ways of thinking about it. I think, I was like, oh, wow, there's so much new information to think about how I engage and walk through spaces with people who I may be mentoring for a day, or people are going to become part of my everyday mentorship. There's just ways to think about that now in a different way. So I'm going to start thinking about that a little more.
Lynnette, that's a great segue. Lisa, I see your other question, and we're definitely going to get to it, but this is a great segue to Kathleen's question about if you want to be a mentor one day, but fear coming off as intimidating. What do you suggest? I don't know.
I think the thing that's important is like really, so kind of going back to what Laura was saying, if you're feeling that uncomfortability, try to figure out where it's like, or like where it's coming from, right? Where it's surfacing from. But I say this all to essentially say, most of these in my specific like situation have been very natural. Most of these like relationships, whether it's mentee or mentor. So I feel that like if it's meant to be, essentially, if you're a good mix and a good match, it will occur and it will happen. And I always say lean into it. So just lean into it, let it happen. And if your fear is that it will lead to a situation that's not symbiotic, probably trust your gut there. If your fear is that there is something that you're doing to make people feel that way, maybe acknowledge that and try to figure out if adjustments are necessary, what those adjustments are. I really do advocate for authenticity and autonomy, and I don't want you to ever place yourself in a position where you feel that you have to not be that person that you are, because that's not practical. So just acknowledge, if it's something that can change and is still true to who you are as a person, consider changing it, but otherwise, it might just not be a good fit.
What about you, Lynnette? How do you not be intimidating?
It's really funny. I think I always feel like I don't think I'm intimidating, but I remember there was this one time I was doing something and I was doing a consulting thing and someone was afraid to ask me a question. And I was like, why would they be afraid to ask me a question? I'm so not intimidating. So I guess it's being aware of how others might perceive you and being more sensitive to that. So I think I try, I'm not a big post a ton of my personal stuff on social media. I just kind of I feel like once Facebook became the most scary place ever, I decided from a personal standpoint to keep a lot of that out of it because it just didn't feel like a safe space for me. So, what I project out there, I try to be sensitive to not just project it's success, the world's great, because I know that that's it. But so when I do put things that are personal or sensitive or just a little more humanizing, I guess, and relatable, I try to just make sure that I think about moving through spaces with kindness and projecting that kindness and just, I think just a lot of the stuff that I'm working on from a lot of the things that I give my time to, I think kind of shows to people by example that I am out there. If I can do, if I can be on the board of Restaurant Workers Community Foundation, then I'm clearly out there doing things. So hopefully that's like my little beacon to people being like, I'm around, I'm approachable, I'm here and there. But I think it is hard when you look at social media as a space, people can seem really intimidating by what they want to put up there, but personal relationships and just really connecting people, taking calls, I think don't be afraid to ask someone. I've done quite a few random cold calls with someone who appropriately asked me to hop on if I had a moment with them. So
I think
take a chance.
Yeah, and Natalia brings up someone I once respected once said the quote, "You are not intimidating, they are intimidated." And I think that's important to remember, and combining sort of what I'm hearing from the two of you, Lauren saying, maybe there might be room to identify how you move through a space, and Lynnette, the boundaries and vulnerability, that sort of push and pull that you're talking about on a social level. I think both of those things are important, and modeling accessibility too, and modeling a boundaried, because vulnerability is not vulnerability if there aren't boundaries around it, right? So kind of maybe stifling a need for intimidation or someone feeling intimidated by being authentic, being open, being boundaried at the same time. It's kind of a tightrope too, though. It's something that I'm constantly trying to figure out. I'll go back to Lisa's question, and then I think we should probably call it just to respect time of people. I don't know what everybody's doing, but it doesn't matter. When does mentor-mentee relationship cross boundary from infringing on people's intellectual work and property? I think that's a really important logistical question, and a question about boundaries. So whoever wants to take that one.
I was just saying, I think this is a Laura Green answer.
This is a Laura Green question.
I think, well, okay, so when it comes to intellectual property, it's hard because I think especially there's been all these taboos about what you talk about, what you don't. Everyone's going to be different in what they can share and what they won't share. But, we've had, it's, you know, it's okay to ask people, or I think it's okay if they're okay with it. I've had lots of speed wreckers and people ask, hey, like I just got, and friends of mine do this, I just got this brand asked me to do 6 drinks for their thing. What do I charge? And I'll just give them a little bit of seed starter questions. You know, I'll always say, well, it's really going to depend on like, what's their usage? How are they doing it? What's their expectation on time? Are they paying you for the ingredients? Like, I give them a lot of questions to start thinking about how they value and put, you know, a price on it, because it's going to be different for everyone. And then, you know, obviously if there's a range and I'm like, they're ripping you off, I'll tell them, you know, but there is a bit of having to basically not asking someone something that you can Google yourself. You know what I mean? Like if it was send an email that you read that they were on, or like you can find that information. Like it's about trying to find the ways to be more more critical thinker with those questions and with the things you're asking about. I don't know if that answered it, but I feel like it's kind of in the middle.
Lauren, do you have anything to add?
I was like, let me reread this question because I'm just like, oh, I mean, I agree with everything Lynnette said. I'm just like, oh, it really is a difficult question to answer because I think you truly have to, for yourself, have and develop an understanding of what your time is worth, and obviously consider all of those other aspects. For me, I can talk to you about like how I was able to figure it out. So like for me, completely being in like nursing and then transitioning food and beverage, like not lacking that understanding in its entirety, it was really just about asking questions. So to Lynnette's point, but asking questions that were appropriate for my situation. So let's say for the sake of talking about COVID, maybe it's a virtual event and a brand, it wants me to host a happy hour for 100 people. What do you need me to provide? Am I curating recipes that are going to be published on your website? Are these folks going to be purchasing their own ingredients, or am I curating cocktail boxes to accompany that? Do I need to provide you with the breakdown of how to make all the ingredients? So like, how much time am I spending curating and like providing you with all of this information? And then for the sake again of my lack of understanding in the beginning, I would take like a bar shift that I was doing this work and comparing it to, you know, that virtual setting and taking into consideration, am I a freelancer? Am I still working at the bar? So there are just so many factors. It's such a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, and I think also there's the corner of it of within the mentor and mentee relationship that the boundary around, it's so touchy, but I'll just come out and say it, but the boundary around trade secrets and business proprietary information that maybe someone from, you know, a mentor who works for a certain organization would be providing a mentee, and what the boundaries are around that. I think, oh God, even talking about that,
It's like,
it'd be
really inappropriate to be like, hey, I'm doing a menu to a mentor. Do you have 8 drinks I could use? You know what I mean? Like, that's not appropriate. But if you're like, hey, I'm thinking through this menu I'm creating for them, and I'm working these things. Do you think I'm on the? Then that's different. That's a conversation about the work you're doing. That's not someone else doing it for you.
Yeah, it's the difference between like, do this work for me and like, hey, I've done this research, but I could use some help in these areas.
Yeah, you know, and I think that also that comes down to communication, managing expectations, and through managing those expectations, finding those boundaries. And yeah, absolutely, it also very much relies on trust. You know, no one wants to feel taken advantage of, you know, and that's because then that also erodes away at the mentor mentee trust situation. But you know,
there's also like a learning part though, right? It's like, remember like for a long time there was that whole thing about like parents who like did their kids' homework for them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's like they're never going to learn. Yeah. You know, so yeah, is your kid moving through life, and yeah, they'll probably get in a better school, but is that really, are they really learning how to problem solve or figure this out and move through spaces in the right way? No. So that's kind of where I find the boundaries. Like I'm happy to give information when it's needed. And if someone's like, hey, you know, like, and that again, I agree, Fifi, that's about a trust thing, right? But but there are times when you're like, if you're just literally asking for me to hand over years and years of work that I've done on my own, that's not appropriate.
Yeah. But I think understanding that, because I do believe, I do see the good in everyone. I do believe in many instances and moments that's not the way people are trying to come across. But I think having that understanding about how it is perceived is extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's a friendly reminder too, that when we talk about boundaries, there's a lot of different kinds of boundaries, and you can have your boundaries around a person, you could have your boundaries around a feeling, you know, of like, a boundary I have in this relationship is I don't bring fear into this relationship. You know, that could be a boundary. You know, and it's going to be up to all y'all as like individuals, first of all, and as pairs to develop what those boundaries are like. And it can be something, you know, maybe unspoken, like what Lynnette and Lauren experienced, but it also, don't be nervous to like talk about your boundaries. Or if you're nervous, lean into that nervousness, you know, to talk about what your boundaries are. And if you're unsure of something, I hope that there's room within your mentoring relationships to ask and to talk about it. So yeah.
I'll volunteer to be like, if you have a question, and if you're in the Speed Rec program and have a question about, is this an appropriate question to ask? Like, you can always ask me and I'll give you my opinion. So if you want like an independent counsel, I'll be happy to be like, you know, because I might know the person, be like, this is my perception, or maybe you should ask it this way. So I'm happy to throw my hat in the ring as being like a help you ask Laura too. I'm like,
I was gonna say, oh my gosh, you don't seem intimidating at all. But that's perfect, like intimidation dissipation modeling. I loved that. I'm intimidation dissipation. Never said that before, and I'm gonna keep it. With that, this was fun.
This is great.
Great time. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. I don't know, there's got to be a better way. Whatever. I'm gonna just
for showing up and give us your time today. Thanks, everyone.
I've been watching too much WandaVision. But thank you very much. I hope that there's a lot for you to all think about. And yeah, have a wonderful Monday. I hope wherever you are, it's sunny and getting warmer. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.